We've reserved and launched a Chameleon instance and assigned it a floating IP. On your instances page, you can see the floating IP here. In this case, my floating IP is 129.114.108.12. This instance is now publicly accessible over the internet, and I want to log into it using SSH. When we launched this instance, we also assigned it a public key. That public key was the one we created on the Horizons interface, and it was called codetech_chameleon. When we created this public key, we were able to download a private key file at the time of creation. We'll be using that private key file to log into our Chameleon instance. This video is going to show you how to log in via SSH on a Linux or OSX based system. To launch the terminal in OSX, I can simply search for terminal. On a Unix based system, it should be somewhat similar. In my downloads directory, I have the private key file that I downloaded when I created my public key private key pair. If you look at the permissions on this private key file, you'll notice that the permissions are set to read for all users. This is insecure, and generally speaking, most implementations of SSH will complain about the key being insecure. The easiest way to log in with an SSH key is to add it to your SSH identity for your terminal session. You can use SSH-add. You'll notice that SSH-add complained that the key file was unprotected and that it's required to change the permissions on the key file. Therefore, let's go ahead and change the permissions using chmod. Using chmod 600 sets the permissions to be read and write only for my user. Now I can go ahead and add it to my identity. Now I can log into the public IP address. Most Chameleon images are configured to have a CC account as the default user account that you log in with. Therefore, to SSH to my instance, I will have to say SSH cc at and then my public IP address. It may ask me if I want to recognize the fingerprint, and it's saved that fingerprint for the instance to my known host list. You'll notice that the prompt has changed to say cc at chameleon instance-jchua, which is the name of my Chameleon instance. I'm now logged in to my Chameleon instance. Finally, I can log out with exit. Now I'm back on my home system. It's possible to rebuild a Chameleon instance. This means rebooting the node or nodes that you've allocated from a fresh image with no changes. You'll notice that in rebuilding this instance, it's keeping the floating IP that I previously had assigned. When an instance boots up for the first time after building it or rebuilding it, it will generate a new RSA fingerprint. When I try to log in via SSH to the same IP address of the rebuilt instance, you'll notice that I get an error message. This error message notifies me that the fingerprint of the Chameleon node has changed due to the rebuild. I can correct this by editing my SSH known hosts file and deleting the existing fingerprint. Most Unix installations or OSX have the known host file inside of the .ssh folder in the user's home directory. Simply delete the line that contains the IP address of the Chameleon instance. Now I can log in with no errors. The system will ask me to verify the new fingerprint of the rebuilt Chameleon instance. Thanks for watching this video on how to log in via SSH to a Chameleon instance on a Linux or OSX-based system. We have an additional companion video on how to do the same thing on a Windows system. If you need help, email help@chameleoncloud.org.